Hello there, MegaMogwai here, and I got an episode of Fake Brazilian Card Boy reviews cards from the new MTG expansion, Theros Beyond Death. Today we're going to talk about my most anticipated cards from the set. I did do a full review on the expansion as a whole in my Twitch stream. I did so a couple of days ago, so in case you want to check that out, you can go to my Twitch page and check out the VOD from Monday, I believe, in which I just ramble about cards for over 3 hours. Today, we're going to go more straight to the point, and instead of me talking about all the cards, I'm going to be talking about my favorite cards from the expansion. I'm basically going to be choosing one card from each color and a few from Multicolored, and I'm going to be going into detail as to why they are the cards that I'm most excited about and how I plan to build around them and why I believe they will be as relevant or as fun to play with as I think they will be. So without further ado, let's just hop into it. We are going to start off with the most powerful color in Magic the Gathering, Kappa, aka white. We're going to start talking about Elspeth Conquers Death. This is an enchantment saga that I am particularly very excited for, and it's not because I think this card is going to be the most powerful card from white this set, even though I think it's going to be one of the best. It's because this card gives me the Eldest Reborn vibes. And in case you don't know, Eldest Reborn, which is a 5-mana enchantment saga from Dominaria, which is black instead of white, is actually one of my favorite cards ever in Standard Magic the Gathering. It may not seem like the most complex card out there, but it was incredibly fun to play back when mid-range was actually relevant in Standard MTG, as unfortunately, the Eldest Reborn kind of like had its peak moment about a year ago, a little bit more than that actually, like a year and a half ago, and then it just kind of like slowly but surely fell from grace as Standard was molded into something different and mid-range was no longer as relevant. And even though Eldest Reborn was available for Standard play until like the end, until rotation happened a few months back, it didn't really see as much play at all, even if it was available in the card pool, which is unfortunate because I really loved playing that card. I loved playing that card back in the day when Esper Control was actually a very powerful force to be reckoned with, and they would rely a lot on Teferi Hero Dominaria on turn 5. I love the idea of just playing Eldritch Reborn, make them sacrifice their Teferi, and then a couple of turns later resurrect their own Teferi and use it against them, or one of my own big boy creatures / planeswalkers. I just really like the way the card played. It felt really good, very satisfying, and a strong turn 5 play to go for, right? I'm also a big fan of sagas in general, and Elspeth Conquers Death shares a lot of traits with the Eldest Reborn, and in my opinion, and I think pretty much as a fact, this card is potentially an upgrade from the Eldest Reborn itself, because the first chapter of said saga is a much more efficient source of removal over the Eldest Reborn. The Eldest Reborn read, your opponent had to sacrifice a creature, which is not really that great. Like, it would be pretty terrible in today's Standard because, you know, people are playing cats, and, you know, I'm just going to go ahead with that. Like, people are playing cats, and they don't really care about having to sack a cat for 5 mana, right? Like, it's not too great. But here, we have a more specific removal effect. Exile target permanent that opponent controls with converted mana cost 3 or greater. So this is still good. Like, this can kill Nissa, who shakes the world. This can kill even like some Mayhem Devil, or you know, any sort of like 3 cost like Corvold, anything. I'm talking about like the food matchup, right? I'm thinking about like the top tier you know, decks. This can also deal with Fires of Invention from Jeskai. There's a lot of things this card hits. Like, it's not really like the fact that it includes 3 or greater makes it so that this card at turn 5 will, unless you're already much ahead in the match, will have a target to hit, and it's something very specific that you're hitting, and you're also exiling it, which means you know, no death effects, no triggers, nothing like that, which makes this a really nice turn 5 play removal to go for that just gets better and better. Turn 2, or the chapter 2 of the saga, which you know, the same was with Eldritch Reborn, is the most or the least impactful one of the chapters. In this case, instead of us discarding a card from the opponent's hand, or no, they had to discard one actually, it says non-creature spells your opponent cast cost 2 or more to cast until your next turn. So it's a disruptive I was gonna say disruptor, and then my brain said disruptive. It's a disruptive effect. It really makes it difficult for the opponent to chain instance, and it can be really key if you're trying to make a powerful proactive play in what would be turn 6, and your opponent has to have, like, you know, several answers. Like, if, for example, if they want to kill something from you with Murderous Rider, they have to pay 5 mana to do so, right? Which really does limit their turn, and it's a nice effect, honestly. I think I definitely prefer this to the discard effect from Eldritch Reborn, which makes this, again, another example as to why this is an upgrade from that enchantment back in the day. And Chapter 3 is where it gets funky and why I love this sort of effect. Return target creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a +1/+1 counter or a loyalty counter on it. So this is technically a downgrade from Eldritch Reborn's effect, as you're not able to target your opponent's graveyard, right? Which is a big deal. But on the upside, we are getting a +1/+1 counter on the creature we get back, or a loyalty counter on it if it's a planeswalker, which is definitely very, very relevant, and thus encourages us to build around this card more so than Eldritch Reborn would, because we are exclusively targeting our own graveyard. It may seem like a bit of a slow effect, but it actually isn't. Like, the fact that this thing can act as a removal tool, a specific removal tool for something, and it's not like it's not limited to, like, it can target enchantments, it can bypass the indestructible tag from a lot of the new enchantment gods coming in. I just really think this card is very good, and I'm very excited to build decks with it. It doesn't require, like, a specific sort of archetype, which is, it's a card that you don't generally build your deck around, really. It's just a powerful tool that you can slap on to many white-based decks. And I'm very excited to try out all sorts of different strategies with it, like, you know, Orzhov, Mardu enchantments. I can also try something, you know, that's just established already, like Jeskai, etc., etc. There's many different decks that can really benefit from this, and I'm just really excited. It's not like I'm not gonna be making, you know, super creative decks with this card, even though, like, some of the other cards that I'm going to be talking about today are more specific for those sorts of, you know, wacky meme tactics. This is more of just a solid turn 5 play that I'm very, very excited to try out, and will definitely be building with, not around, like I said, with, in several different decks. Any deck that incorporates white, at least at the very beginning, I'll probably be slapping in this card, to be completely honest with you. So yeah, really excited for Elspeth Conquers Death, aka the Eldritch Reborn 2.0, and hopefully it does live up to the hype, at least my own hype for it. Let's move on to the next one. Let's go on to the color blue, and let's talk about the god herself. Where is she? I probably skipped her. I'm really excited about Protean Thaumaturge, by the way, like honorable mention to it. But we're going to keep it to 1 card per color, and if I had to choose one, it would have to be Thassa Deep Dwelling, a 4-mana 6/5 with Indestructible, a legendary enchantment creature, so it's both a creature and an enchantment, and is also a god. As long as your devotion to blue is less than 5, Thassa is not a creature. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 other target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control, and for 4 mana you can tap another target creature. The third paragraph, or line, however you want to label it, is really the big thing for me, and what makes me very excited about this card, because I think this card has several different usages. For example, you can incorporate Thassa into a deck that's very heavy on upon entry effects. For example, our buddy Pageman and his ever-growing love for Jarok decks, or elemental builds with Risen Reef and Jarok, and just entry effects with Neoform. Those sorts of decks can really benefit from Thassa, as every single turn we can basically exile a Risen Reef, for example, and bring it back, and, you know, either ramp or draw a card, or we can return, you know, any sort of upon entry effect creature and benefit from it greatly, right? Thassa can really fit in those upon entry effect sorts of decks, and I'm very excited to play around with all sorts of different color combinations revolving that sort of strategy. But on top of that, and perhaps what I'm most excited about Thassa, is her potential inclusion. And maybe she could even give birth to Grixis aristocrats, or at least a Grixis sacrifice sort of archetype, right? Like, because we already see these Rakdos Aristocrat decks really benefit from Claim the Firstborn to steal something from the opponent and then sack it with the oven, right? But with Thassa, we can claim the Firstborn, one of the creatures, we can play her, exile that creature, and then when it comes back to the board, it will come under our ownership, which means our opponent will not get that creature back at the end of the turn. So this can lead to some incredible like value plays, because in case you don't know this, in a card game, there is few things that outvalue a play such as stealing a card from the opponent. Because you're not only removing that card, you're also generating one yourself. It is the ultimate value swing, really. And with Thassa, it can be a very easy, abusable like combo that I'm just. It's also like it's so degenerate and fun. Like I think Grixis, aristocrats could legitimately be a thing, and I would never think of aristocrats in a Grixis shell before, right? But Thassa is she's my favorite of the enchantment gods, basically. Of the mythic rare ones, she's easily my favorite because she has so much potential. There's so many different shells she can fit in, and this is definitely, unlike the prior card I showed you, Conquer's Death, this is a card that you can actually build a deck around. And there's several different decks that you can build around Thassa, which makes her really exciting, and the god that I am most definitely looking forward to the most. So I will definitely be trying to build stuff with her in today's stream, and I'm very excited for that. So that's enough about blue. Let's move on to the best color in Magic the Gathering. No bias whatsoever. It is black, ladies and gentlemen, and holy shit, am I excited for this one. Nightmare Shepherd, a 4-mana 4/4 with flying, enchantment creature, not legendary. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a 1/1 and it's a nightmare in addition to its other types. This card is my favorite card from the set. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. This is my favorite card from Theros Beyond Death. The meme potential is crazy, but also the competitive viability of this thing could be very real. And obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is this guy in a aristocrat sort of deck, right? Like, I'm talking about the aristocrat archetype a lot in this video, but there's actually like a lot of support in this set for it. Not only for Rakdos, but for other variants to be born out of it. There's just so many tools, so many resources that can encourage or enhance the archetype itself. Like, not only this guy, but also like from black itself, we have stuff like Woe Strider, which enables us to sacrifice creatures for free, which is really important. From red, we have the Blood Aspirant, which is like a 2-mana Mayhem Devil that, is proactive instead of reactive, right? Like, there's so many new toys, man, to incorporate, and it's gonna make it so that these sorts of sacrifice focused strategies are going to be very different one from another. Like, there's gonna be several different ways to approach it because there's gonna be so many cards that work and are competitive within the archetype that you won't be able to actually fit them all in the same deck, which is exciting. It's going to lead to variety regarding that theme, and I don't know about you, but I'm definitely hyped up for that. Nightmare Shepherd, though, oh my lord, this card, it's like a Midnight Reaper, but just like turbo and just super exciting, right? Like, whenever we sacrifice a creature, we exile it, and then we create a token that's a copy of that creature. Like, how cool is that? Like, that gives us so much freedom to just sack units, and this also works with Claim the Firstborn. Obviously, like, we can sacrifice something and then create a 1/1 copy of that token creature, and it's kind of like the same thing that Thassa did in a way, right? But on top of that, there's just so much potential for this, man. I feel like, despite all my excitement for this card, I barely scratched the surface of what this thing can potentially do. And I'm just really, really excited to dive into it. My favorite card, and that's basically where I'm going to end this ramble, because I could just, I could talk about Nightmare Shepherd like for 50 minutes and, not even get tired about it. So yeah, that's the card that I'm looking forward to the most from black. Let's move on to red. Red has a red has a lot of like really cool, new toys incorporated here, like a lot of, obviously damage effects because it's red and they're all about damage, but a lot of cool stuff like Ox, Furfuros, which I think is really strong for Fire's Invention decks. Phoenix of Ash is also looking promising. You know, good cards like Furfuros Intervention. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, by the way. But the one card that I'm really excited for because of its mind-blowing just meme potential is the Storm Herald. This card can be hilarious. This card in the right build can be so funny. It is a 3-mana 3/2 with haste that says when Storm Herald enters the battlefield, a lot of upon entry effects, by the way, in this set. Return any number of aura cards from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to creatures you control. Exile those auras at the beginning of your next end step. If those auras would leave the battlefield, exile them instead of putting them anywhere else. So this guy comes in with haste and just brings all of the auras your graveyard to the board, right? So the first thing you may think of, well, maybe I could build like a mid-range deck with auras, and this guy can make it so that, as the match drags out, my fallen auras can come back and help me. No, but the idea, like where this guy will truly shine, is in some sort of degenerate OTK strategy, which I will be most definitely exploring for. Like I want to try to build a deck, kind of like a Reanimator deck in a way, right? In which we have a lot of self-mill going on with stuff like Cavalier of Thorns, potentially Emery as well, etc., right? Like just good cards that enable me to mill the top of my deck, and maybe also effects that enable me to discard from my hand as well, and just send all the auras to the graveyard, just as many as possible. Just keep sending them, and then play Storm Herald and just bring them all back onto this guy with haste and just one-shot the opponent. That's what I want to do with this guy. And that is the deck that I will be trying to build with this boy first, like for sure. This is one of the first decks that I'm gonna tackle. It may take me a while to find the proper distributions, right? But it's definitely the thing that I'm. It's the first sort of degeneracy that I will embark in, and oh boy, am I looking forward to that journey. It's gonna be a good one. So that's for Storm Herald right there. When it comes to green, besides all the obvious ramp support that green got, there's a nice toy that I do want to play around with, and that is Mantle of the Wolf. This falls more into the category of Elspeth Conquers Death. It's not really a crazy combo card, or it's not so much about the memes of this one. It's just that I think this is like the first actual good, viable aura that we've seen in Standard for a long time, really. This is a legit good card. This can actually potentially fit aggressive Gruul decks or Golgari decks potentially, because +4/+4 is a big deal. That's a huge swing. And the fact that even if you're going to play this onto a creature and then that creature gets Murderous Rider, for example, you're still going to be getting 2/2 green wolf creature tokens. By the way, like I'm really thrown off because I'm not streaming, but I'm getting like followers randomly like that. Why are people following me right now? I'm not even live. This is kind of like really distracts me a bit. I don't know. So yeah, like I said, this card is actually a good aura. Like I'm not talking about I'm not excited about this card for the Storm Herald deck. It's not really, even though it could definitely fit there. I'm just excited for like an actual, aura to fit in, kind of like what Embercleave was. Obviously, I'm not putting this at the same category as Embercleave, right? But I think it can be legit good. And honestly, like it's the card that excites me the most about green, because green is the color that kind of like bores me the most right now in Magic, because it's a little bit overtuned. And I mean, I'm also very excited about the first Iroian games. I think this card can be pretty decent, but again, no card that I'm like super hyped about when it comes to, I don't know, like, yeah, Nessian Boar is exciting, I guess. Big boy Timmy dude, sure. And of course, Nyx Bloom Ancient, but the decks that are going to fit Nyx Bloom Ancient are basically Simic ramp decks, so if they want to play him to begin with. So I don't know. Green is definitely the color that I'm least hyped about right now, but I think a lot of us can share that sentiment, really. And when it comes to the multicolored cards, I'm going to talk about a few, even though I'm excited about quite a few. These are the first ones that I'm going to be venturing with. First of all, Ashiok Nightmare Muse. I like Ashiok a lot as a 5-mana planeswalker. I think he's a very interesting take on it. Not not overpowered as a 5-mana planeswalker compared to something like Nissa, but it can definitely be viable and could lead to some fun Dimir tactics. His +1 is nice as it enables us to establish board presence, even though the 2/3 tokens don't trade into Nissa's lands, which is kind of a big deal. But oh well, what are you gonna do? And the thing that I like about Ashiok is that his ultimate is pretty achievable. You only need like 3 turns to get to use his ultimate, and that includes a turn in which you play him, or her. I don't know what the fuck he is, honestly, but he comes. I'm gonna call him he. He comes onto the board, goes for a +1 2 turns consecutively, and then the third turn you go for the -7, and it's a it's a really cool ultimate that I definitely want to see. I want to see if this can justify, because a lot of times Dimir-based decks lack that, turn 5, turn 6 play that's truly impactful. And I want to see if Ashiok can really make Dimir great again, basically. I also like his -3 a lot. I think it's definitely very, very useful. And it's just a rather unique planeswalker, even though the core design of it is actually not unique at all. It's still interesting considering how many planeswalkers we've seen lately that haven't really caught my attention too much. I'm very excited for Ashiok. I'm also very excited for Calyx, Destiny's Hand. This is a more like deck specific sort of planeswalker. Like, this guy obviously does not fit any sort of deck, even if it is Selesnya, as you have to have a reasonable amount of enchantment cards in said deck, as his +1 is a tutor for not really a tutor, but it searches for enchantment cards, right? And if you don't have a good amount of them, he's not really going to be doing much, right? But maybe like in a Selesnya enchantment sort of build could be possible, and if that's the case, Calyx will be going into it, and I definitely am excited to try him out in that sort of shell. Another card that I'm really excited about is Haktos. You may think, oh, maybe Boros mid-range with Haktos as your turn 4 play, and that's not really what I want to do with him. I want to really abuse this guy. And the best way to abuse Haktos is to incorporate him in a Jeskai shell. Because in a Jeskai shell, you can add stuff like the double. I forgot the name of the card. Basically, what was it called? Yeah, there we go. The Spark Double. Yeah, the Spark Double, and there's other cards as well that can duplicate him. Like, for example, combining Haktos with this guy right here. Let's go up to blue. He has like a name that's very difficult for me to actually pronounce, so I'm not even gonna try. Where are you? Where are you at, my boy? Yeah, the Protean Thaumaturge. The Protean Thaumaturge is a cool card to fit into that shell as well, right? Because the idea with this is that Haktos is kind of like weakening himself upon entry. His upon entry effect is actually bad, right? So the thing about Haktos is that if you copy him, or if you have a Hushbringer. Is that how the card is called? Like, I have to Google this again. I'm sorry. Hushbringer, right? Yeah, Hushbringer. If you have a Hushbringer on the board, then the upon entry effects don't really happen. So when you enter the board with Haktos, you don't have to choose one of these numbers at random, right? So he has protection from each converted mana cost other than the chosen number. But if there's no chosen number because his upon entry effect was denied, then he has protection against everything, which is kind of insane, right? So that's where I'm looking. That's what I'm looking to do with him. I want to combine him with blue, because combining him with blue is when Haktos can really get nutty, and can be a pretty funny card to play around with. And what else? I'm also excited to try out Polukranos. Even though I'm not sure if there's any specific deck. I think it could just be an inclusion to the Golgari aggro list. I think this guy could potentially fit Chris Kvartek's aggro Golgari deck with 4-mana Vivian and, the Rotten Regisaur and all that stuff. I think this card could fit that deck as well. Siona is also exciting for, alongside Calyx for the Selesnya Aura sort of deck. And Uro can just go fuck himself because this card is just busted, and I really dislike the fact that they decided to print this. But, what are you going to do? When it comes to artifacts, nothing really catches my attention right off the bat. There's some interesting stuff, but nothing overly, super exciting in that sense. And that's basically my take on the cards that I'm looking forward to the most. Those are the cards that I probably more likely will be venturing into first. And we will be going on from there. What are the cards that you are excited for the most? What decks would you like to see on this channel? As I am going to be going hard in on Theros Beyond Death, obviously. And I'm going to be trying to feature, the coolest decks that I can personally come up with, or, any cool idea that I also get from anybody else, I can also incorporate onto here, because I want to show it all, man. And if you guys want to see anything first, specifically, like any card that you really want me to cover, then let me know in the comments, and I'll do my best. So, yeah, I hope you guys are excited as I am. This is, if you're a card game enthusiast, when a new expansion is out, that's like the honeymoon phase, right? And you gotta love it. So I'm gonna dive into it, and I'm gonna stop talking because I need to start preparing the stream and to start, building the decks and all that stuff. And I am running low on time because I do have to render this. So let me know what you guys think about the cards. If there's anything that you think is more exciting than what I talked about, like if there's anything you would have picked different than I did. And that's all I gotta say. Have a soul day. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for daily content, and I will see you around tomorrow.